All right. Well, this is AnnavonRights.com, ANNAVONREITZ.com, and this is her article number 50, 50. It's called Dear John Regarding the IRS. And I've already kicked the IRS's butt to the other side of the freaking street. So I figured I would do a video. And I'm just going to read directly from Anna's article because I think it's fantastic. And I just sent it to all my friends on Facebook and everything. So, Dear John, regarding the IRS, the problem is that neither the Internal Revenue Service or Internal Revenue Service, there's an upper lowercase and there's an all uppercase, which are run under the auspices of the Federal Reserve, nor the IRS, which is run under the auspices of the IMF, are government agencies. So the problem is that neither of these are agencies. They're not government agencies. Matter of fact, if you look at the top of like an IRS, what you would call an IRS bill or a letter from the IRS, it'll say something like Department of the Treasury. Well, that's not the Department of the U.S. Treasury. So there's a big difference. It's all word semantical drivel, as we're about to find out. Nor the IRS, which is run under the auspices of the IMF, are government agencies. They are just subcontractors, hired as bill collectors by the IRS and accountants by the Internal Revenue Service. It's hardly worth going after the lackeys. The ones responsible are much higher up the food chain. The one number used as both your Social Security number and your tax identification number is used to keep two accounts. One records credit due and one records debts due. The IRS or the IMF keeps track of the debt side, and the Internal Revenue Service, all caps, Federal Reserve, keeps track of the credit side. The IRS sends a bill to you in the name of your all caps, John Quincy Adams, all caps, a state-owned estate trust. So in other words, the state owns that trust because it derived from the birth certificate. For charges related to the government services provided by the United States Incorporated, all caps. This is just business, howbeit it involves known mail fraud. The tax is a bill for public services rendered, defense, roads, you name it, and so far as that goes, it is perfectly justifiable bill which is purposefully and self-interestedly misaddressed. The debt side of your account is run under the familiar number in the form of 123-45-6789 with dashes. We're all familiar with that number. Dashes equals debt side of the ledger. Where this all falls apart is the presumption that the state franchise and the United States Incorporated are making that you, the living man, are responsible for providing private credit for this public debt, and that you have voluntarily agreed to act as an unpaid federal employee known as a withholding agent. And I'm just going to stop here and put my little marker there because there are two IRS commissioners or commissioners of the IRS on YouTube videos where you can go listen to them being questioned, and they are asked, is it voluntary? And they're like, yes, it is voluntary to pay income taxes. Okay? They're telling you straight to your face, and you still go fill out a stupid 1040 and sign it under penalties of perjury and commercial liability and all that crap. You're gifting them free money. They never explain anything about their system to you, and certainly did not provide full disclosure, which null and voids any contract. So you are well within your rights to object and invoke your common law right preserved by UCC 1308, Uniform Commercial Code 1-308 and 1-103.6, not to be bound by any defective contract, including those that are unilateral, lacking full disclosure, which are inequitable, not in kind, tainted by fraud, entered into by third parties, merely claiming to represent you. They are representing the living man in the form of John Quincy Adams, all caps, or which are deemed to exist as a result of your receiving any compelled benefit or fruit of monopoly inducement. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. you can just say no to the IRS and sever any further presumption or relationship with them as of the end of the federal fiscal year, which at this time that she wrote this was June 30th. They keep changing it. Of any year you choose. Apparently they keep changing that, where the fiscal year ends. You simply invoke your rights stated above and send the IRS a polite letter referencing 26 USC 6013. That's Title 26, United States Code, Section 6013, and tell them that you are, quote unquote, revoking your election to pay as of the 30th of June or whatever it is, of whatever year. However, as irritated as we all are, and as unjust and criminally misrepresented their administration of the income tax is and has been, we also have to admit that government services have to be paid for. So now we come to the other side of the account ledger. The credit side of, quote unquote, your account is operated under, quote, your, unquote, social security number without dashes and enclosed by asterisks. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and I'm going to say what I meant by I kicked the IRS across the street was a while ago I performed and accepted for value to the IRS where I made a presentment to them and created a money order and stuff like that, and they in essence returned a letter to me and you know, addressed in that all cap name that looks like my name, but it's really not me, but yet they assume that it's for me. But anyway, I proved that what I did worked because they sent me coupons with the social security number without dashes, which is, it's the credit side of the IRS. It's the Holtzville, New York side of the IRS. And maybe sometime I'll get on and just show you guys that stuff. Of course, it's kind of hard to do without showing the social number and all that stuff, but this is how I know it worked, because they sent me something with the coupons. So if you've ever done a 1040 and you're figuring it all out, and let's say you own your own business or something, but then at the end, let's say you underpay or overpay or whatever, at the end they'll usually have you print out these coupons, these quarterly coupons that you mail in with a payment. You're assumed to mail it in with a payment. Well, the truth is that you don't mail it in with a payment. You mail it in by itself and you do something with it. Now, I don't think this is really happening now, but this is the way it was. All right, everything's changing so fast now. So I'm not saying go out and do this, but you can actually, if you listen to the rest of this letter or this article, you're going to learn how to get out of this mess. And it's simply just by sending them a letter. I revoke my election to pay taxes by the Internal Revenue Service. All right, so let me start over. The credit side of, quote, your, unquote, account is operated under, quote, your, unquote, social security number without dashes and enclosed by asterisks. So it'd be asterisk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, asterisk, by the Internal Revenue Service, run by the Federal Reserve, that has recently reorganized under the auspices of UN Inc. All right. Technically, you have never owed any income tax ever in your life. The very word income is corporate accounting term. Corporations accrue income. Living people accrue property. That's the legal definition, long and short of it. What has been done by those claiming to represent you is to set up various legal fictional entities operated under your given name. So the debts of, quote, John Quincy Adams, all caps, unquote, are the debts of a federally owned and operated, all caps, estate trust located in Puerto Rico. And as a legal fiction entity, a corporate entity, it does accrue, quote, income, unquote. In fact, because the rats have unlawfully and without your knowing consent, they've converted your bank account to the ownership of this estate trust. Every dime you donate to John Quincy Adams or whatever is considered taxable income. That's how the IRS prosecutes its victims. It claims that you owe the debts of this Puerto Rican estate trust and uses the confusion caused by the semantic deceit of similar names to entrap you into their court proceedings, and then use the already accomplished unlawful conversion of your bank account to seize funds held in the name of, quote, John Quincy Adams, unquote, all caps. All this nastiness could be avoided if this system were functioning properly and the debts of, quote, all caps, John Quincy Adams, unquote, were being paid by the Internal Revenue Service, which is what should be happening. The Internal Revenue Service, now being operated as the all caps Internal Revenue Service, has control of the credit side of the John Quincy Adams account, and there is plenty of credit in his account to discharge any debt that he owes. However, since the IRS is billing you instead of billing him, you get caught up in the crosshairs quite unnecessarily. The Secretary of the Treasury has, without justification, quote, unblocked. Let me read that again. The Secretary of the Treasury has, without justification, quote, blocked, unquote, most of these credit accounts and pretended that the beneficiaries of these estates are, quote, unquote, unknown, even though they managed to find you readily enough when they are trying to collect a debt. They pretend that you are missing when it comes time to pay one. Most recently, the rats have attempted to redefine your estate trust, which is operated under your name, styled like this: all caps John Quincy Adams, or in my case, all caps Michael Wayne Jamison Jr., and run by the Washington, D.C. You know what that name is if you look at the birth certificate. That's pretty much the name. And run by the Washington, D.C. municipal government as a transmitting utility owned and operated by the United Nations city-state and doing business under your name, styled as John Q. Adams, all caps. Please note that John Q. Adams is not even a legal or specific clearly identifiable name. It could not relate to a man named John Quincy Adams or another man named John Quinton Adams, and so on. It could be, I think she meant to say, it could be related to a man named John Quincy Adams or another man named John Quinton Adams, and so on. There's no way to know. These semantic deceits resulting in false claims and identity theft and misappropriation of credit and misadministration of the public trust is the heart of the real fraud practiced and fostered by the Internal Revenue Service IRS system. We, especially the judges and law enforcement and military men and politicians, have got to put a stop to this craziness and misadministration and identity theft, and there will be nothing stopping any foreign state and any private corporation from creating legal fiction entities in our names and bringing false charges against us. As for this history, 1917, the Trading with the Enemy Act, falsely declared that the American people, the employers of the United States of America Incorporated, were enemies and conscripted, that is, borrowed us and our property for the war effort. Now, it should be recognized that no corporation has the right to declare war on anyone or anything, and that the men doing this had no granted authority to represent us in any such manner or fashion, much less authority to lay a false claim against the employers of the United States of America. It was fraud then, and it is fraud now. And by the way, the United States of America, it's capital U, capital S, capital A. This is the British territorial United States of America, Incorporated. It was fraud then, it's a C jurisdiction. It was fraud then and is fraud now. All claims based upon it are null and void, and the rats merely need to be called on it and held feet first to the flames. However they did this, as they did with their takeover of the monetary system via the Federal Reserve, another piece of fraud, under conditions of semantic deceit and secrecy. In this way, the banks running the Federal Reserve System placed a false claim of ownership against us and our assets, our land, our businesses, our homes, everything. After the First World War ended, they failed to return our property to us. They kept it, and in 1933, the rats gratuitously included us and all our property as part of their bankruptcy. They falsely claimed that we were standing as, quote, voluntary sureties, unquote, for the debts of the now bankrupt, quote, United States of America, upper lowercase, Incorporated, and its, quote, state of, Arizona, California franchises. So having borrowed our assets, they now falsely claimed that we were responsible for their debts, and in this manner enslaved and obligated us just as a cosigner on a car loan is obligated. Again, none of this was fully disclosed, and the nature of the United States of America, Inc., as merely a privately owned and operated governmental services corporation being run by the Federal Reserve banks, was never revealed to the American people. As a result of these acts of fraud and false pretenses, Americans have labored for almost 100 years to pay debts that they largely never owed and have been grossly imposed upon and defrauded by people they trusted and who owed them the fiduciary trust that has been violated. As of July 1st, 2013, the Pope cleaned house and settled the bankruptcy of the United States of America Incorporated. At that point, all the Puerto Rican estate trusts should have been formally dissolved, and all assets presumed to belong to them should have been returned to their true beneficiaries, the living American people. And I'm going to interject here and say, and this is why we do the forms, the basic editable forms on Anna's Article 928 and 839. This is why we do, if you're a veteran, this is why you do a DD 2168 on top of your DD 214 and send a letter. This is why we print out 1105, 1147, 1162, and if we have time to do the 1174, we do it. And we prepare ourselves. We get our ducks in a row, if you will, because they're going to settle sooner or later, and those of us who have our paperwork ready are going to be taken care of first. And I'm telling you that my family and we're ready to go. Instead, the criminals in D.C. contrived to try to work out another new deal with the operators of the United Nations city-state. The United Nations city-state has allowed the old criminals who were running the Federal Reserve System to reorganize as the new Federal Reserve under UN auspices. This criminal syndicate has claimed, falsely as ever, that all the property contained in the individual estates was abandoned and therefore belongs to the banks. So they're claiming things were abandoned, and I'm interjecting again because we're not claiming that it's ours, because we don't know that we lost anything. We think we have rights, and when we go to court, we think we have rights, and we have all these rights and stuff when we stand in their foreign courts, and we don't have any rights because we're foreign to them, and they're foreign to us. Let me start over. This criminal syndicate has claimed, falsely as ever, that all the property contained in the individual estates was abandoned and therefore belongs to the banks. And they have begun to try to transfer all title and ownership of our property and assets into their brand new transmitting utilities doing business under the John Q. Adams names. I don't know about you guys, I'm going to interject again. I get an SRP statement every month that they want me to think as a bill, and it says first, middle, initial, last, if you will, in all caps. That is not me, and that is not my wife, that is not any of us. It's a fiction of who we are, right? But it's not us. It's the transmitting utility. They're trying to convert everything over into that. And if you pay it, you're giving into it. And until I figure out a time to get that settled out right, without them turning the electricity off, so to speak, we'll figure it out sooner or later. Pope Francis gave them 3 years in which to come into compliance with their corporate charters or face being liquidated. Over 1 whole year has passed so far, and they are laughing in his face and doing everything they can to rob, rape, pillage, damage, and confuse the American people they have victimized for so long. So I believe this was written in 2014 or so. Make no mistakes, these people running both the Federal Reserve and the IMF are criminals, and these organizations are international criminal syndicates which have enslaved and falsely indebted the American people via identity theft, practice of personage, unlawful conversion of assets, fiduciary trust fraud, kidnapping, inland piracy, contract default, increasing the public debt, and myriad of other offenses. The American people are owed all their assets back, together with the interest and profit which have been made off those assets. The American organic states are similarly owed all their assets back. All that was borrowed must be returned, and any false pretense that the United States or any successor to this fraud, the UN Corp, for example, has any right to continue to control Americans or their property via this network of fraud and false claims must cease. This is what the rats have done to America and Americans. Every single one of them who knew the truth and did nothing about it are criminals in our midst. Now that it is becoming known, it is only a matter of time before the similar frauds that have impacted Europe and the former Commonwealths will become self-evident and the perpetrators forced out of their holes like the vermin they are and prosecuted as such on both national and international basis. Let that end come and come quickly. Let the sorting of the goats from the sheep begin. Amen. That's like a Lance Wallnau thing. Separate the goats from the sheep. It's also a biblical thing, right? Which is where he got it. Those who have been complicit through ignorance must come out of Babylon or be destroyed by it. And by the way, if anybody wants to send this to Lance Wallnau, I think that would be amazing. I've actually seen him twice in person, so in the flesh, that is. So that's it. That's the Dear John regarding the IRS. And I got to tell you, if this is 4 years old, there's probably a lot more things online about the Internal Revenue Service, but this was one that I had not read yet, and I just read it today, and I got so excited about it. I sent it to a buddy of mine who just wrote like a six-figure check to the IRS, and he knows that I don't do that stuff anymore, and he's kind of waiting for the hammer to drop on me, and I said, the hammer ain't gonna drop anywhere near me, man. It's not. I've already sent my letters, and I've already let them know, and if I have to remind them again, I will. So that's it. Over and out.